Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Stories That Shape Us, where we explore the moments and the experiences that define who we are today. As always, I am your host, Brock Doty, and we are on episode 11, and we are diving into a fascinating journey of leadership, emotional intelligence, and the power of understanding our emotions in both professional and our personal lives. My guest today, certified emotional intelligence practitioner and the founder of HT Compassion, an emotional intelligence consulting firm here in Dallas, Texas. Hiba, as an EQ strategist, has shaped leaders, teams, and organizations around the world. But her path into this success wasn't built overnight. It's been a journey of self-discovery, learning, and honestly, development of her own emotional intelligence. And that now fuels her mission to help others to do the same. Hiba, I just want to take a moment to say thank you for joining me on my podcast today. I know how busy you are. You were just telling me about all the things that you have lined up in the month of May. And I'm really grateful that you are here because your experience in emotional intelligence is such a powerful tool for leadership and personal growth. And I can't wait for our listeners to hear your story and insights. So thank you again for being here.
My pleasure. I'm so glad we're speaking, Brooke.
I know many of our listeners might not be familiar with the term emotional intelligence. So, for those who might be new to emotional intelligence or want a deeper understanding of what it is, can you break it down on what exactly emotional intelligence is and why it's important?
So, emotional intelligence is quite simply being attuned to your own feelings and emotions and being attuned to the feelings of those around you to create more synergy and healthier relationships. Whether it's at home, at work, in every realm, it's one of those skills that really determines the health, longevity of our relationships with those around us.
I couldn't have explained it any better myself. So let's start at the beginning. You've come a long way since you first became interested in emotional intelligence, and your work has touched so many people around the world today, including myself at our last CEO summit that we attended. Can you walk us through your journey and what really first sparked your interest in emotional intelligence, and how did it shape the path you're on today?
I was always a very sensitive child, which meant that I was always very sensitive to the tones, the moods, the inflections, the facial expressions of those around me. That gave me almost like a gift, and I was always picking up on those things. And I realized that when I was around 12 or 13, I was just fascinated by understanding, why people behave the way they do, why people get mad or why people get sad or what makes people happy. Unlike a typical tween or teen, I was at the age of 12 or 13 reading books like 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teenagers, Conquest of Mind. I think I always had that growth mindset. I was always into reading to see how I can be a better version of myself. Emotions just always fascinated me. And so, throughout, I went to college, I got my undergrad, I got an undergrad in business, I did my early childhood certification, but I realized that was in all the things I did, even when I worked in corporate, when I kind of looked and took inventory of my life, I was like, wait a minute, the skill that I've always been recognized for, that I get praised for, is always being able to coach really well, is always being able to mentor. It's about how I can speak. It was one of those things that lies within you. It's kind of dormant because you're like young and you're wanting to get the high paying corporate job and climb up the ladder in that sense. But as I did more of that, I think that always was like a constant theme in all the things that I pursued. And so after kind of doing corporate, working, a few jobs, and my family and I, we own a business here in Allen as well. We have our own preschool. And even in that, I realized I was always drawn to understanding how our employees work, what drives them, what motivates them, what feelings are we stirring in them during their workday. And that's when I was like, wait a minute, let's put this all together. And I was like, it really is emotional intelligence. On that path, I then started getting more credentials. I did coursework from Harvard University on resilience building. I got training from Gottman Institute on emotion coaching, as well as a certified emotional intelligence practitioner certification. And the more I did it, I was like, I just know all this stuff. It was like, this is stuff that they're formalizing and teaching, but I've kind of always been into it. So that's how I kind of got into this space. I started HT Compassion at a very unusual and vulnerable time in my life. I had just recently decided to end my marriage, and it was obviously a very sad, scary, unknown time. But I also knew that your purpose has to be bigger than your pain, and you have to use it to build and uplift. That was also the idea that got me through a lot of difficult times in my life, which was rather than letting things drown you, it was about, okay, how can I use this to help somebody? How can I use it to uplift others? And that's when I decided to start HD Compassion, which is my own emotional intelligence consulting firm, which is how can I speak, coach, mentor, talk about this subject that is so close to my heart.
I love what you said about let your purpose be bigger than your pain. Because when you're chasing your purpose, it's no straight line. It's lots of winding roads, fork in the roads, a lot of wrong decisions. But when you fail forward. And I love that you mentioned that because so many people think that success is easy and that it's a straight and narrow path. Like, oh, look at him, he's made it because he was the chosen one. No, there's lots of sleepless nights. There's lots of uncertainty. There's lots of doubt. And being able to manage your emotions during that and continue moving forward is what ultimately leads to the most success. So going back, what was the exact turning point that you had? I guess, was there a specific moment or experience where you realized that EQ was not just an interesting concept, it was just something that you can use to truly change lives?
I think the more I engaged with people, the more I observed the world around me, I saw, we have a global mental health crisis going on. There is emotional burnout, suicide rates, depression rates, substance abuse are all very high. And I recognize that we often view these things in a very reactive way, like, oh my gosh, this is happening, but it's often too late. I recognized and I saw the power that emotional intelligence is a very essential and important proactive approach towards the global mental health crisis. And if we start working on emotional intelligence sooner and younger, I believe we're going to be helping with the global mental health crisis. And so part of that conviction is what made me develop emotional intelligence curriculum for schools and preschools. Because this just needs to be the way we teach numbers and letters, and our societies pride themselves on my kid can read and write. And it's also about how comfortably can my child identify emotions and express emotion and manage those emotions. Just the way that if you learned a language when you were 5, it would be a lot easier than when you are 35 or 45. Same thing with emotional intelligence, right? These are skills that in addition to academic, we need to be building emotional intelligence. And so that's kind of what fueled my desire to, do a lot of educator training, development of curriculum for schools around the world, because I really feel that you can be the smartest person out there. And we're seeing that. There's super brilliant people out there, Brock, but they are loners, they're depressed, they don't know how to be around other people, they can be destructive to themselves and often to those around them. What if we nip this in the bud before they made an unfortunate headline?
That's such a powerful realization there because, like what you said, you could be the smartest person out there, but you're alone and nobody wants to be alone. I think what you're doing with HT Compassion, creating curriculum for young kids, I think that's powerful. That's game changing. So I'm going to take it back a little bit farther. You built your own consulting firm, HT Compassion. How long have you been in business? How did you decide to take this step? And what was the kind of impact that you were hoping that your work would have on the world?
So Brock, I shared this story because I think it really, gives me a lot of inspiration. Whenever I've taken on any projects, whenever I've started any projects, it's been in a very unusual fashion. It's not the typical, let's sit down, let's develop a business plan, let's have a model, to me, I feel like I'm a builder, and so I'm fueled by vision, motivation. I have a lot of zest. And with HD Compassion, just like I think the example of Moses, right? He got to the Red Sea. He didn't know what was going to happen, but he had to get there and then have faith that God was going to part it and he was going to get through. I draw a lot of inspiration from that. Often, I don't really have a very clear-cut idea of everything that's going to be, what's going to happen, but I knew that I had this gift, I had this skill, and I wanted to share it. So about 3 years ago is when I started. And To me, it was about what can I do with this skill so that more lives can be uplifted, more people become aware of this. And initially, when I started, I was doing talks for a lot of working parents, a lot of educational institutions. And then I had people come up to me and say, "Oh, I wish you could come to our workplace." And I was like, aha. And that's where I started developing more tools. The reality is, in today's world, we are all short on time. We're also very limited attention spans. And so it's about what can I do in 1 hour or an hour and a half that's going to be engaging, that's going to be motivating, and that's going to stick with you. That's where I do a lot of these workshops for organizations and teams, which is how do we get people to be engaged, not fall asleep, and actually use these skills not just at work, but also in all realms of their life, because your emotions does not stay just confined to your workspace. It's everywhere. You walk with your emotions, you live with your emotions, they're with you. And so if we can harness the power of that, we create a lot more impact in our lives and those around us. And so it started with just doing a lot of trainings, but then, I got into like coaching. Now I'm getting a lot of, demand for doing stuff for organizations. And I've really enjoyed the journey, because I think it's kind of, I had a vision, I had an idea, and then I think the rest was kind of like it took a life of its own.
What I love about your workshops is they're hands-on. At least the one that we did at CEO Summit, that was fun, and it did stick with me because I can still picture my little guy. We made a green brain because we wanted someone that can think for themselves. We had eyes on top of the brain because we wanted a forward thinker, and we put a heart on the brain because we wanted them to have a heart for people.
I remember yours distinctly because it had, it's fun, it's goofy, but it drives. I believe, Brock, that when we're talking about important, serious stuff, and especially when we talk about emotions, people often tend to be either a little avoidant or standoffish, or, oh, this is fluff, or, oh, is this therapy? And so what I love doing is, using these very unconventional leadership tools, like Play-Doh, crayons, wooden blocks, because I think part of it is we kind of have to just let loose, right? And when I use Play-Doh, I use Play-Doh a lot. And every time I'm amazed at, the messages I get from people later, they're like, it took me back to my childhood. I just realized how much I enjoyed this. I remember at that one summit, one of the people said, I didn't realize how much I've missed doing this, and I'm going to stop on my way home from here and pick up some Play-Doh. One person said to me, and I really was like, wow, I believe he was a chief financial officer. He said, this activity is so powerful. I'm going to take my wife out to dinner and I'm going to ask her to sculpt her ideal partner.
Wow.
And I'm like, wow, that's brave, that's bold, and that's really, as I said, you don't restrict it to just one role. It gets you thinking outside the box. So it's that kind of feedback that gets me really excited, because it's like, yeah, I'm not going to sit here and bore you with emotional intelligence. As we're going to be using our hands, we're going to get busy, we're going to be talking, we're going to be thinking.
You've done such impactful work within the EQ business and communities. But I think what stands out about your journey is how deeply emotional intelligence has shaped your professional life, but also your personal world as well. How does emotional intelligence show up in your everyday life, whether it be in your relationships, outside of work, your own self-growth? I know you said you have a growth mindset, and I absolutely love that. So keep that up. Or even when you navigate challenges in life.
So, Brock, I feel that emotions are the raw materials for everything else that we do, right? Whether we're talking about raising leaders or becoming more empathetic or, name it. But emotions are the driving force for the best of things that we do and for the worst of things that we do. It is driven by emotion. And so to me, when I view the world like that, I view emotions as energy. When someone's mad, when someone's frustrated, when someone's being difficult, when someone's being sad, whatever emotions they're bringing, if you view it as energy, it takes away this idea of this is a good emotion or bad emotion. And I think viewing the world like that has really helped me develop a lot of compassion, because it stops being personal. Even before I formally was like, oh, I'm doing emotional intelligence, it just, I think, naturally would come to me where when someone would share something with me, I'd ask, tell me more about that. How did that make you feel? It was interesting because people were like, wow, I just said so many things that I wasn't even aware of. And even so with my kids, I have a teenager and a 7-year-old. And we have made it as part of our vocabulary, right? Like, what do you think you're feeling right now? And, it's going to be, I'm feeling frustrated. Okay, I can see that. And being able to build connection in that moment and say, I know you're feeling frustrated, and trust me, I know what that feels like. Sometimes I get really frustrated too. It helps to de escalate, because often what happens when there's conflict at work or at home is I'm feeling like Brock is just not getting me. Brock is not understanding me. And when we get into that mindset, we're often feeling defensive, because what is our brain kind of wired to do? If someone seems a little threatening emotionally or physically, we assume that we have to protect and defend ourselves, and we get into that fight mode. And a lot of my trainings focus on understanding the upstairs brain and the downstairs brain, which the downstairs brain was meant to keep us alive. It was meant for survival. It was meant from an evolutionary perspective to make sure that if a bear was going to attack you, you were ready to act fast. So the downstairs brain is meant to be very reactive. It's supposed to act fast, not think. It's just supposed to go at it. The upstairs brain, which is more of the prefrontal cortex, it's the ability to think. It's where rationality, empathy, morality, logic exist. The goal with my work is, and the goal of emotional intelligence fundamentally is, how do we make sure that we are using more of the upstairs brain when needed, and not defaulting to the downstairs brain, which is where reactivity comes from, where conflict arises. And the approach with that is, and there's different strategies, right? It's about retraining yourself, rewiring the brain, giving people tools that they can use. And by doing that, like even at home, or people that I know will always joke and be like, okay, Hiba, give us the analogy. What do you think we're feeling right now? And it's obviously not, it's like I'm not a mental health professional here, but the idea is, what can we do with these emotions that you have? Let's name it. So one of my favorite strategies, and it's a very successful tool, is name it to tame it. When you are upset or frustrated or whatever you're going through, the mere act of having to name the emotion and label it, it lowers the pressure on that reactive part of your brain, and it kicks in the upstairs brain. It's like a deeper question. And just the act of doing that really helps. Those are strategies that we want to start teaching early on. We want to make it part of our work cultures, of our school cultures. We want to make it part of our home cultures. And I'll share this story because it warms my heart that, I've been doing this with my kids, and I've got boys. And really, I'm big on making sure that I raise them to be emotionally resilient and emotionally intelligent. Um, but often as moms, we think we're doing these things and it's going nowhere, right? Ugh, nothing is clicking. But I remember this one day, just like a few months back, I was talking to my 13-year-old. He's like, "What's wrong, Mom? You're not looking okay. What's wrong?" And I was trying to like find the word, and he looked at me and he was like, "You know what you are?" He goes, "I think you're overwhelmed." I was over. He goes, my mom's too busy. She's doing too many things. And he sat me down. This is my 13-year-old who's typically like, pretty fast to go from 0 to 100. He sat me down and he was like, "Tell me, what's going on?" And it was amazing to see that self-management, social awareness, and relationship building. Those are the components of emotional intelligence. And here was my 13-year-old, demonstrating it and helping me work through it. So, when you ask about its personal impact, it's just amazing to see how it really cements relationship. It builds the muscle for stronger, deeper connections. And in a digital AI world, we need more of that.
There's so much AI going around, and self-checkout lines, and just everything's automated now. And we're kind of taking away the personal interaction.
Mhm.
And so I love that you shared that story of your son sitting down with you, because he sees a good example at home of what you do. And I think he's going to carry that over into his friendship groups, his profession. It'll carry him a long ways. And so I think since you've built that foundation, it shows him that it's okay to be vulnerable. I know growing up, I've never really, still to this day, I don't like talking about my emotions. I don't like talking about those things because I feel like it makes me less manly. And I, God forbid, will not cry in front of somebody. Like I cry in private, and because it makes me feel weak. How have you noticed that? I know you're not a mental health professional, but from men to women challenging their emotional intelligence and bringing that out of them.
I commend you for sharing that, because that shows self-awareness. The first part of anything is being aware of it, right? And you're aware that that's something that you don't feel comfortable doing. And that what you shared, Brock, is exactly the reason that I developed the Man Up program for an academy in Africa. And it was catered to youth, to males between the ages of 13 and 24, because that's typically the ones that have a lot of emotions. And unfortunately, society tells them that it's not manly to have them, right? You can't be sad, you can't be hurt, you can't be frustrated. And that's a very unfortunate thing, because as humans, we were gifted with the ability to feel a multitude of emotions. That's what makes us human. But I think what society has failed at doing is encouraging everyone, and especially men, to be able to see the beauty and the manliness in being able to embrace all those emotions. And just because you're feeling sad or feeling vulnerable or feeling whatever emotion, it doesn't make us weak, because also with any emotion now, we also know that there's ways to express it, there's ways to manage it, there's ways to regulate it, and there's ways to use it to build stronger connections. I see a lot of relationships really struggle, and a lot of relationships fall apart because we have this idea that it's not okay to express emotion. I need to be the strong one. But real strength is in being able to embrace and own all parts of yourself in moderation. This was really kind of what fueled my passion for starting this program for the youth in Nigeria, was that these are men that no one has ever talked to about emotions like this, and most of them said we feel numb. That's very unfortunate to see that so many young men just feel numb. They'll be like, blah, I don't feel anything, whatever. And that indifference is exactly where loneliness, unhealthy thoughts, risky behaviors are brewing often, because that's what they're feeling is the only acceptable way to be known and seen.
That's crazy that it's worldwide. I always thought it was just a epidemic within the United States, but
Oh no, I would say it's even worse in other countries.
I know just looking at the map of the United States, like I grew up in Montana, a north central state by Canada, and counseling was
Mhm.
frowned upon. But if you go like to the either coast of the United States, whether it be the West Coast in California or if you go to the East Coast in New York, like counseling is an everyday thing. Like it's normal, it's normalized. But I think that's also a leading contributor of why Montana has one of the highest suicide rates in the United States, complemented by it being rural and isolated country.
It's promising to see that mental health awareness has really risen. It's no longer as taboo as it was maybe, 15, 20 years ago. There's awareness of it and it's more commonly being talked about. But I think what's key is that it's not our emotions that are the problem. It's our emotions about the emotions that are the problem. So we're mad about being mad. We're triggered that we're triggered. We're anxious that we're going to be anxious. And that is really what fuels this unhealthy space. Just the way one of the things, I talk about when I do training for educators is, starting the day with this idea, or even meetings, starting meetings with not just, oh, hey, how's everyone doing today? But hey, how are you feeling? Right? The small change in language creates this sense of safety that, it's not just how I'm doing, but hey, how are you feeling? Or how did that make you feel? Right? And when people can do that, it changes the way we show up. We feel safer. We feel we can be more of ourselves. We can be more, authentic. Because if I feel I can only be happy and strong around Brock, or if you felt I always have to have this certain aura when I show up to work or when I talk to Hiba, what is it doing? There's much more to you. And you're not giving yourself permission to express it. That's a huge disservice, because we spend a lot of time at work. We spend the majority of our lives at work. And if we're not showing up with the multitude of emotions that we have, really, are we really showing up?
Wow, Hiba, that's a great perspective. I love that. I know I'm guilty. Every time I walk into our operations meeting, I'm usually one of the last ones there, and I'll just say, "Good morning, team." I won't ask how they're doing. I won't ask how they're feeling. But now I think I want to start my meeting by just saying, "Good morning, team. How's everyone feeling this morning?" And I think that little added verbiage will make people perk up and feel like, oh, all right. So,
And I'll warn you, um, Brock, when you do that initially, you're going to feel uncomfortable and they're going to be like, you won't get much, right? And that's okay. But the idea is that when we change language, we're also changing the vibe. We're also changing kind of, you're showing that this does matter. And then even often if you're talking to, somebody one-on-one, but just taking that moment and saying, hey, but how did that make you feel? I know that must have, how did you take it? Just those simple questions create that deeper connection. They're like, this person cares.
yeah, and I think that's also going to get some eyeballs looking at me because our team is mostly male. And like we were talking about just earlier, the stigma of males not allowed to talk about their emotions and how they feel. So I'm going to try that and I'll shoot you a text after about the first couple days and give you some
Please
feedback.
do.
All right, Hiba, I want to shift gears back to your work today. How does emotional intelligence play into the day-to-day operations of your business and services that you provide at HT Compassion?
It's focused on providing tools for people to become more emotionally intelligent, build more emotionally resilient teams. So that means whether it's coaching, whether it's workshops, whether it's doing, different kinds of retreats, all of those things are geared towards building better communication, better collaborations, feeling better at home and work. So kind of my approach is unique in that it's not just let's talk about emotional intelligence at work, but I feel like one of the big disservices that, we kind of are dealing with is that we have broken people up into many different fragments. There is work Brock, there is home Brock, there is the church going Brock, there is the one that has fun with his friends Brock, and we've broken people up into way too many segments. And that really creates a sense of isolation and almost like, who really am I? We have to recognize that people are multidimensional. And the more we can nurture and develop people to be better in all their roles, that's a favor we're doing not just ourselves, but society. So my work is about helping people feel better at work and at home, and teaching skills that allow them to develop those deeper connections in both those realms. Because for you to feel really good at work, you do need to be feeling good at home. And for you to be feeling good at home, you do need to be feeling good at work, right? You can't have a crappy day at work and then, just show up every day at home and feel really great. Eventually, they tend to seep into each other. And that's where we see people say, by the time I go home, I'm just checked out. I just want to get in front of the TV. I don't have any energy. I don't want to talk to the kids. I don't want to really deal with the partner. Or people at work are just basically counting down hours to get out of here and go home. That's not healthy. We need to be able to be present. We tend to check out or zone out when things are just not feeling very interesting, right? We daydream, we go off in our heads, and that's okay. We kind of do that sometimes. But unfortunately, with the level of disengagement we're seeing at both home and work, there's a deeper problem there, right? We got to tap into that. And how do we get people to be more present? Well, part of it is, what are they really doing? We need to add more meaning and purpose to what they're doing, and making them recognize that your presence matters. Right? When you're not present at the dinner table, it matters. When you're not present at the meeting and your body's there, but your mind and emotions are not, it shows. It's visible.
When you're present at home, but you're not present at work, you're counting down the hours. And then you said when you're present at work, but then you aren't present at home, you don't want to be with your partner. How do you find a fine balance between those two?
So I think it goes a lot deeper than just, we can talk about, oh, these are 5 things you can do. Those are nice starting points, but I, like to go deeper into things, and I like to talk about things that can cause long-term, more sustained change. There's a brilliant book that I read called Well-Being, and it was based
That
on...
was a wonderful.
You've read that, right? And so, they talk about career. And it really puts it really brilliantly that no matter what you're doing, whether you're, retired, you're stay at home, you're a volunteer, you're a CEO, whatever it is that you're doing, you have to find your work to be purposeful. It has to have meaning for you. It has to be something that you at some level look forward to. Sure, not every day, but it's work that you enjoy. And I think I'm amazed at the number of people that are like, yeah, it's just a paycheck for me. Do you recognize that you spend more time at work than you do in any other domain? So imagine that kind of energy that I'm just kind of doing the work, I'm going through the motions. That's not healthy. It's not healthy for you. It's not healthy for the spaces you're in. You're not really doing justice to yourself. And I feel that when we get into that rut of feeling like it doesn't matter, home doesn't matter, work doesn't matter, you're just pretty much like soulless going from one to the other. And then the weekend comes and you're going to have fun with friends or do something fun and you're going to feel like, oh, this was great. But as humans, we weren't just meant to live life Saturday to Saturday. There's the whole week in
That's so
between.
true.
We're missing out on life. So I kind of like this idea of how can we make the rest of the week something that you're not just trying to escape from? Fun fact in this book, if you remember, it said most people have heart attacks on Monday. They did all these studies and they tracked people throughout the day. And they found that people that showed the highest amounts of well-being were people that throughout their workday, sure, their stress level, their good hormones went up and down, but for the most part was pretty consistent. They found for workers that are disengaged, their only rise in serotonin or dopamine was towards the end of the day. And so imagine that transition from the weekend to a Monday is hard because if you don't like what you do, it's like, oh gosh. Managers, 82% of people will quit a job because of a bad manager. Now you're a manager. If you're in a leadership role, your emotional intelligence is very important because it's determining the well-being of people around you. You don't want to be the reason someone's like, oh my gosh, I hate my boss. I don't want to go to work, or my boss just doesn't get it. That's where you are able to create more presence, more impact. You're able to make someone feel like what they're doing is important, that their presence, their work means something. If you're not doing that, then we wonder why we have high turnover. Oh, we're struggling with absenteeism. We're seeing disengaged workers. Well, I'm like, let's
Yeah,
reverse
where's the
engineer this
stem
problem.
of the problem of absenteeism? Because is it actually everyone has doctor's appointments this one day? Or is it the manager within the certain department that is driving those absenteeism? You have to enjoy what you do because, like you said, you spend a majority of your time there, which is kind of sad if you think about it, but make it worth your while. Sometimes I'll get in my head about a certain project that I don't want to do. I'm not a numbers guy.
Me
It's
neither.
just not me. I'm a people person and I want to be out on the production floor talking to
Mhm.
people instead of sitting behind a screen looking at a spreadsheet of the budget to send over the Department of Defense due X amount of hours. And I don't like that. I dread that. But if I get in my mind saying, I hate this, I don't want to do this, I'm going to dread it even more. And that's where burnout starts. So I just need to keep a positive mindset. I call it a PMA, a positive mental attitude. And I do my task and do it 100% because I would want someone that is doing the same task reporting to me to do it well. So why won't I do it well if I'm doing it for myself? Just got to keep a positive outlook on things, and I think that helps avoid burnout and helps you enjoy your work. Because if you go down that negative path, there's no telling you where you're going to end up.
Oh, it's easy to go down that rabbit hole or to go down that hill. But the problem is, if we don't have any tools and resources to help us make our way back up, there's no safety net, there's nothing to help us bounce back, then that's dangerous because that's not where we want majority of our people being,
I
right? It's
agree.
just not a healthy space to be in.
You are doing incredible work globally as well. You talked on it a little bit, um, but can you tell us more about the initiatives like the Man Up program and what you're doing over there in Africa?
So the MANA program kind of started, I believe it was last year, and I collaborated with an academy in Africa, and they work with, youth, they work with, girls and boys, and it's like they do weekend school, and it's kind of like character building. And so I connected with a wonderful person over there, Basolo, and we talked about how this could be something that can really be beneficial to them. I said I wanted to focus it on male. I've done a lot of women focused or women, a lot of championing a lot of women causes, and I really felt like, I wanted to do something specifically for men, right? I felt that sometimes gets ignored. And I developed this for them. And so it really talks about kind of embracing your emotions. We talked about, we talk about what vulnerability means, anger, different and maybe healthier ways to express anger, the power of vulnerability. So a lot of that was kind of built into the program. And so that has been, it's been exciting because it's just obviously a population I've never worked with. They're very different and yet so similar. And that's what I love about doing global work is that we feel like, oh my God, we're in different time zones and we speak different languages. But the essence of human emotions are all the same, right? When we cry, it's because something hurts us. We cry because we're hurt. We all tend to love in a similar way. We all tend to express sadness in a similar way. So there's a lot of similarity there. And it's really about noticing that commonality and building on it. And I love the feedback I got from a lot of these young men that were reaching out and sharing a lot of stuff with me. They said, we've never typed this out. We've never talked about this to anybody. And it was like, wow. For many of them, I said, I really think you need to find a good mental health counselor. Like this is deep. And it seems like there's a lot of history to a lot of these emotions. I can't just give you strategies for how to move forward because we've got some work in the past that needs to be done that obviously needs, a mental health professional. So that's kind of how that started. Another initiative that I am also extremely proud of is the Hope Kitchen. So it's part of the nonprofit where I started volunteering. I also started volunteering, Brock, at a time in my life that was very challenging. It was a difficult time. And rather than just being wallowing in sadness or grief, I, again, went back to that same principle that my purpose must be greater than my pain. And in uplifting others, I am being uplifted. And so I started volunteering and helping a group of these, at-risk women develop skills, find ways to be better adjusted to the society that they're in, and realized that a lot of them loved cooking. And that's where I helped them start their own home-based catering business called the Hope Kitchen. It's been around for about 4 to 5 years. And what's really exciting to me is that a lot of these women were, when I started with them in that cohort, they were working or they were living in low income housing. And they had, a lot of odds stacked against them. Fast forward to today, many of them have been able to buy their own homes. They are successful business owners. They're getting lots of orders and just their confidence has changed. And out of all the things that I've done, I think the Hope Kitchen is the thing that makes me the proudest because it was not about me. It was all about uplifting and empowering others. And I think the real joy is when you can do that and have no skin in the game.
Yeah, when you take your eyes off of yourself and focus it on other people, that's when true joy comes from the heart. At least for me. I can't speak for everyone.
Well, Brock, I think when you do that, when you stop worrying about yourself and you start worrying about people that how can I help them, I think that's when God puts his eyes on you. Right? That's when you get the attention of God because it's like, yeah, it's not just about me, right? I can sit here and think, oh my God, I've got these problems and these challenges and I've got young kids and how can I volunteer? You could have many excuses not to do things, right? And pretty valid ones, not to discount from them. But then you can also say, well, I have one life. It is my duty as a human being to find ways to help and uplift others, to share whatever privilege I have with those that don't have it. And in doing that, it's not like I'm doing, oh, this is such a great, feel good kind of moment. It's also like it just becomes part of your lifestyle. And I think that to me has been the biggest, my form of self-love and self-care has been
Hiba, you've
volunteering.
shared so much about your journey in this last hour and the incredible impact of emotional intelligence that it's had on not only your work, but the people that you have helped. And with all of these amazing things that you've already accomplished, I'm sure so many people are curious what's next for you. I know when we talked earlier, you said that you've been co-authoring a book, which I think is awesome. What are some of your future goals and initiative that you're most excited about on the horizon?
So there's the book that I'm co-authoring with Will Liu King and a whole bunch of other amazing experts in their fields. So that hopefully should be coming out later this year. So I'm excited about that. I have a talk where I'm going to be a keynote speaker in Rhode Island, where the theme is act small, inspire big. So that's a 25-minute keynote that I am excited and preparing for. I have another talk coming up for cybersecurity professionals. and how cybersecurity professionals can tie in EQ into what they do. I'm working on also a lot of community give back, which is, again, what can we do with what we have to help others? And so I've developed a Leading with Empathy certificate for executives in transition. It's a tool to maybe help them, make them more marketable, help them be more desirable in the marketplace. In addition, I am scheduling workshops for organizations, doing stuff for teams, and doing a lot of coaching as well individually.
I thought I was busy, but you're pretty busy. If, say, someone wants to add more to your busy calendar, how can they find you? How can they set up a emotional intelligence workshop with you?
So go ahead and check out my website, HT, those are my initials, Hiba Tanvir, so htcompassion.com. And there's a form to get in touch with me. I would love to explore ways that I can bring EQ to your personal life, to your professional life, to make your teams healthier. And, exploring different ways that basically, and I want to tailor it to your needs, right? So kind of figuring out what it is that you're struggling with and making sure we develop something that's specific to that. Because the worst thing is when someone gives you a cookie cutter solution and you're like, yeah, but that was not my problem. So I like to spend a lot of time on that piece. And again, using time effectively. I understand that time is short, so my workshops are meant to be very engaging, very fun. I like them to evoke curiosity and not eye rolls. And so that's kind of what my specialty is. So I would be more than happy to come speak to your organization, to your teams, to your groups, and kind of share the power of EQ and how it really is the competitive edge and the biggest asset that you can develop in today's world.
Presented at the CEO summit that we were a part of a couple of weeks back, and it stuck with me. So whenever we have our budget meeting for 2026, I'm definitely getting your name brought up for our organization in the aerospace defense industry, because I think it would be useful for our employees.
I would be honored.
The work that you're doing through emotional intelligence is truly shaping the future of leadership. And I'm sure our listeners have gained so much insight, because I know I have. And as we wrap up, I just would love to give you the floor to share any final thoughts, messages, or anything that you'd like to leave with the audience.
Thanks so much, Brock. First of all, Brock, I really enjoyed this conversation. It just felt so candid, so natural, so organic. So total credit to you for kind of, making it seem so seamless. EQ is the biggest skill and the best investment that you can make in yourself, because in today's overly digitalized world, it's really your humanness that's going to set you apart. And the challenge is that we also don't know how to be human in today's world. And so emotional intelligence allows you to tap into that. Your IQ takes you up to a certain level. Your cognitive abilities, your technical skills will help you rise to a certain point in your career. But then after that, what distinguishes you from other people is going to be your EQ. And that's just not me saying it. There's Harvard Business Reviews that confirm it. There's studies after studies that show that in senior level positions, as people rise up in opportunities, it's going to be the person that knows how to do relationship building, that knows how to manage their emotions and those around them. And so EQ is no longer a fluff term, which a lot of people might think, oh yeah, that's a nice thing, I'll get to it, when I have space in my budget. It's really what you need to drive your bottom line. It's what you need to run your business. And the sooner and the faster that organizations and leaders embrace and get that, I think they're saving themselves a lot of unnecessary work and frustration. And that's exactly what I kind of love doing, is helping people feel better at work and at home, using the science of emotional intelligence and the right dose of Play-Doh, wooden blocks, and crayons. Because again, development has to be fun. It cannot be boring. It cannot just be like, oh gosh, he's calling another meeting again, because I've been there. I know what it's like. I would like, oh my God, this is so painful. And so I kind of really have made it my life's mission to make sure that development feels like it's developing you and not putting you to sleep. So connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm also on Insta on HT_compassion. My website is htcompassion.com. Let's chat. Let's talk about, how I can support whatever your goals are. And I'd love to share my gift of whatever I know about EQ with you.
Hiba, I just wanted to say thank you again for being here and for sharing your journey with us, because the impact you're making in this world is so profound. And I'm so excited to see where it takes you next.
Thank you so much, Brock. I think what you're doing is amazing, creating these wonderful spaces for people to talk and share and recognize that our stories shape us and they also can impact other people.
Absolutely. But wow, what a conversation today with Hiba Tanvir. I've got to be honest. I'm really inspired with everything that she has shared about emotional intelligence, and I learned something today. something that we can all use to better understand ourselves and connect the world to make it not feel so small with the people around us. One of the biggest things that stood out to me was how emotional intelligence isn't just for leaders, it's for everyone. Whether you're a student, a parent, or someone working in any job, being aware of your emotions and how you handle them, it makes a huge difference in how you show up every single day. It's about understanding what you're feeling and why you're feeling it, but ultimately using that to understand and improve your decisions, your relationships, and your overall well-being. Hiba talked about how emotional intelligence can give us an edge, especially in a world that is increasingly driven by AI. And honestly, that little statement hit home for me because as much as technology has changed everything in our human side, the way we understand, connect, and empathize with each other, that still makes us stand out as individuals. That's where EQ comes in. It's the thing that helps us bounce back when things don't go as planned, handle tough conversations with more grace, and to really connect with the people around us. And here's the thing, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Emotional intelligence is something that we can all get better at, but it's something that we have to develop. We all have the ability to be more aware of our emotions and the emotions of others around us. We can practice in small ways every single day, whether it's being more patient with someone, learning how to express ourselves better to our partner, or just taking a moment to breathe when things get stressful. For me, today's conversation was a powerful reminder that we can always improve how we understand ourselves, but also others. Whether it's with friends, family, or coworkers, emotional intelligence gives us the tools to lead with kindness, resilience, and empathy. So if you're listening to this podcast today, I want to challenge you to think about how you can bring more emotional intelligence into your own life. Maybe it's taking a moment to think before you react in a tough situation. Maybe it's practicing empathy and trying to understand how someone else might be feeling in a conversation, or just small steps that can lead to big changes in how we connect with others. In today's fast-paced world, emotions can often get the best of us and how we react. We react quickly, speak without thinking, and sometimes let our anger or frustrations guide our actions. But what if there was a better way to navigate our emotions and relationships, especially in those difficult moments? The Bible offers us a practical wisdom on how to do just that. In James 19, we are encouraged to be quick to listen and be slow to become angry. This simple yet powerful advice can transform how we interact with others, how we manage our own emotions, and how we continue going forward. So in James 1:19, the verse says, "My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry." This simple yet profound verse not only provides guidance for living a peaceful, loving, and direct life, but it also aligns with the core principles of emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence teaches us listening is more than hearing words. It's not about tuning in to those emotions as needs behind those words, but when we are quick to listen, we show emotional awareness. We're not just reacting to what's being said, but we're trying to understand the feelings and perspectives of others. This is where empathy comes in. Being truly present and understanding while the emotional experience of the other person is being told, even if we don't fully agree with them. Listening can transform relationships. It creates a space for real conversations, helping us build trust and avoid misunderstandings down the line. And in moments of quick conflicts or tension, being quick to listen can help us find emotional common ground and prevent emotional outbursts. Next, how it highlights being slow to speak. This principle is about self-regulation. which is a crucial aspect for emotional intelligence. Self-regulation means taking control of our own emotional responses, especially when things aren't going as we hoped. It means pausing before reacting, especially in moments of frustration or anger. When we're slow to speak, we're practicing emotional self-control. Because this isn't about suppressing your emotions, it's about choosing how to express them in a way that is calm, constructive, and thoughtful. In a moment where we may be tempted to lash out, emotional intelligence teaches us to take a step back, take a deep breath, and to think before we speak. This helps us communicate more effectively and ensures that our words contribute to the building of understanding, not tearing it down. Finally, this verse speaks on being slow to become angry. Anger is a natural emotion, but it can easily escalate if we don't manage it properly. By being slow to anger, we are practicing emotional awareness. We're not letting anger control us, but we're constantly deciding how to deal with it in a healthy way. When we're slow to anger, we're choosing peace over conflict. We're allowing ourselves to pause and reflect and give us the opportunity to ask ourselves, what's really the root of our anger? Are we frustrated by something that we can address calmly, or is it out of our control? Are we letting our external stressors cloud our judgment? When we take time to think before reacting, we build emotional resilience on top of our emotional intelligence. And that, in way, is choosing to handle situations with grace and not impulse. So, putting it all together, what does it look like to practice all of this? The beauty of James 1:19 and the emotional intelligence that is displayed is that these principles can be applied in every areas of our lives, whether it be at work, with family, friend, or even in our own thoughts. When we're quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry, we're not just becoming better communicators, but we're building emotional intelligence along the way. So when we apply the principles of James 1:19, we become more self-aware, more empathetic towards others, and more in control of how we respond to the world around us. And when we practice those steps on a regular basis, we start to build stronger relationships, reduce stress, and foster an environment of understanding and peace. So I challenge you to make James 1:19 a daily practice in your own life. Let's strive to listen quickly, speak slowly, and slow to anger. By doing that, we don't just improve our emotional intelligence, we improve our ability to lead, love, and live in a world that reflects God's grace and wisdom in our own lives. So as I wrap up today with Hiba Tanvir, highlighting how emotional intelligence is not just a skill, but it's a powerful way of living. It can transform our personal relationships and our leadership effectiveness. I hope you found her insights as practical as I did, because there's so much power in the way that we can handle our emotions. And her journey is just a powerful reminder that we can take control of how we respond to the world around us and make it ours. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to subscribe and share this podcast to anyone who would think would benefit from these impactful stories. It would really help spread the valuable lessons to a wider audience. And don't forget to tune in next week, as we'll be bringing in another exciting guest, one who's sure to inspire wisdom within their story. And trust me, you don't want to miss it. Until then, keep shaping your story, keep leading with heart, and keep building on your emotional intelligence. This has been The Stories That Shape Us, and join us each week for real stories, real growth, and real impact. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time.